Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba and welcome to Ask Mark, where I do my best to answer all of your scuba diving questions. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below about anything to do about the equipment or whatnot. And if you want me to mention it in next week's show, then use the hashtag AskMark, and it just makes it a lot easier for me to find it. This week we're talking about dry suit maintenance, bolt snap maintenance, BCD lift, the pros and cons, fin sizing, depth changes, and marine conservation. So let's dive straight in with the first question, which this week comes from SparkyABQ, and they ask, would you please discuss what maintenance and cleaning a person should do for their dry suit? Thank you. You're welcome. So your dry suit. First thing is to give it a good proper clean on the outside and to a certain degree on the inside. So wash it with just nice warm soapy clean water to make sure any nasties that are in the fabric are scrubbed out. And then I like to hang it up, ideally upside down by the boots, just so that anything from the inside of the boots can then travel downwards. And if you don't have boots, you only have socks, so you just have to kind of fold it over. Do the best that you can to air it out on the inside. You can get some pretty cool wide hangers. They're called hang air, that actually has a fan on the inside that blows into the suit to dry it and freshen it up from the inside. So that's the first thing. Then for long-term storage, I like to clean the valves. So the dump valve and the chest valve, you can actually unscrew those. Sometimes you need a tool. So if you don't have that, it's a lot harder. And just especially if you use talc or some kind of chalky lubricant for your sleeves, because that can just build up on the inside. So just give it a good sort of once over with a toothbrush. Make sure there's no nothing on the inside of the valves, to make sure they're nice and clean and they move nice and freely, and then pop them back on. Make sure they're nice and tight so they don't leak. Otherwise, depending on your cuff seals, it's important to look after them, because latex especially can degrade quite quickly if you don't prep them. I tend to use a non-perfume, very neutral, it's actually specifically for scuba diving dry suits, like talc material. Small amount on the outside, just so that it's, because latex, especially when it's touching itself, it just like melts when it's in long-term storage. So it is best to prepare them as well as you can, and then fold it or roll it as best you can. If you can have it hung up, that is better, but a lot of people don't have the space, so just sort of roll it up, keep it in its in the bag that it came with, and that's kind of it. Just make sure it's nice and clean, nice and dry as well. Give it more time than you think, because moisture ends up in the seams and whatnot. So give it a good amount of time to dry out. Not in the sun. The sun can damage your seals and damage things. It degrades them a bit faster. So leave it to dry sort of out of the sun in somewhere nice and dry. And that's about it really. But yeah, take particular attention to your neck and your cuff seals. The zipper as well. I forgot, you just take a toothbrush to the zipper to remove any contaminants and give it some wax, some kind of zipper lubricants, according to the manufacturer, because different zips require different things. So have a quick read through that, and yeah, I think that's about it. Question 2 comes from Graham Birch, and they say very formally, "Dear Mark, I very much enjoy your channel and your advice, thank you, but I'm wondering if you can comment on what seems to be a glaring omission in diving training these days. Most, if not all, certification agencies advocate regular maintenance of your cylinders, regulators, BCD, etc., but I've never seen any advice on how often you should bring your bolt snaps in to your local dive centre for maintenance. Should this be done annually or more often? When a technician inspects and services a bolt snap, do they just do a visual inspection, or do they need to be hydrostatically tested? For those of us who are foolish enough to service our own equipment, can you offer advice on the types and sizes of O-rings used in typical bolt snaps? And finally, if I'm using nitrox, would you recommend lubricating my bolt snaps with oxygen compatible lubricants? As the world-renowned expert on bolt snaps, I look forward to your advice." Yes. If you are diving nitrox, it's best to use like Krytox or Crystal Lube or whatnot. No. just make sure they're nice and clean. Give them a wash with fresh water, just because the actions do go nasty over time. You can kind of hear that it's rasping. So I tend to use just silicone grease. It doesn't have to be anything overly sort of interesting, but usually first I try and use something a bit more penetrative, some kind of natural oil. I think I've used olive oil before, and that just gets on the inside of the mechanism. There's no O-rings or anything, it's a bolt snap, but I think that was a joke. And yeah, just a couple drops of olive oil give it a good sort of action to get it moving around, break up any contaminants on the inside, and then do it for the other side. If you've got a double ender, you can't do them both together because they share a barrel and they share a spring, but yeah, just give it a good once over on the inside, and you'll actually notice if you use enough olive oil and you let it drip out, you can actually see like any rust or anything on the inside dripping out of it. So so that's the best thing. Try and use some kind of natural oil. Silicone's okay, but it doesn't really get in and around everywhere, even with repetitive sort of action. So yeah, I tend to prefer like a natural oil, something like olive oil or something that's not going to just damage the ocean, basically. But yeah, do that once a season or something, but give it a wash in fresh water so that salt and whatnot doesn't build up on the inside. Kyle Knickerbocker says, hello Mark, hope you're getting some good dives in. What would the benefit or drawbacks, or if you get more lift in a BCD than you might actually need? So the main drawbacks are going to be the additional cost, because it costs a little bit more, and the additional material of when it's deflated, because you ideally don't have it inflated completely when you're underwater. So that means a lot of that material is just going to be, because they tend to be a bit wider and they just have more material for that larger bladder, so it tends to flap around a bit more. The answer to that is like a retractor system, which does have pros and cons. That's very much down to you whether you want to go down that route. The benefits is that yes, when it's deflated, it tucks everything in. The downside is if in the unlikely event that you get a rupture and you do require that buoyancy, it basically squeezes all the air out of that rupture. It's unlikely, but it is a potential fault there. I mean, I've known divers who use retractors all the time and they've never had an issue, but it is something worth keeping in mind. Yeah, I think those are the main, and the tacho effect. If you get something that's substantially larger than your cylinders and you put any buoyancy into it, if that bladder can wrap up around the sides of the cylinder and that becomes higher than your dump valve, then you have to shoulder up to be able to deflate it. It's not the end of the world, but if you're hardcore tech and you are only ever perfectly horizontal by a spirit level, that will bug you. But I think those are the main things, just the additional cost, the additional materials that could get caught and snagged in stuff. But if you're going like a few pounds over or whatever, it is not a huge deal. But yeah, just the cost, the material, and potential tacho effect. Question 4 comes from Dive with Matt, and they say, hey Mark, hey Matt, got a quick question, if you don't mind, no worries. I've just ordered a new made-to-measure dry suit, very nice, and I have gone for neoprene socks and rock boots. My current RK3 fins are a tight fit with boots on the current dry suit, which are attached onto the suit. Will I need to get a larger size of fins to be able to fit over the rock boots? Scuba Pro ones, if it makes a difference. Not really, but good to mention. Hope everyone at the company are well. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, look forward to Friday's episode. Of course, you might, because you're going from a pair of socks over your foot and a pair of boots to a pair of socks, a neoprene sock, and then a rock boot over the top. So chances are you will need to go up a size or get an additional size. I wouldn't... I never like to rush into things and buy that extra set unless you literally have a dive the following day or something. So I'd probably at least try them with your existing fins. You'll probably find that they just sit right on the toes, because that's what happened with me when I got my Argonaut dry suit, and yeah, I had my RK3s that were fitted to, or they fit perfectly with my 5mm boots, but then on my rock boots they just kind of sit on the toes, and that spring heel strap is just stretched to its max. So it kind of works, and actually by the end of the dive they kind of wiggle their way on because it all compresses down, but then trying to get them off at the end of the dive, you'll put your back out because they're just jammed on there, and then your foot has then expanded inside. So you do get them off eventually, but it's not glamorous. So yeah, if your existing fins are a little bit snug on your fitted dry suit boots, and now you're going to rock boots as well, yeah, I fully expect you to have to go up a size with your fins, unfortunately. Question 5 from Steve says, I learnt and got my certification in the Florida Keys, so I've never gone past the 35 feet. Okay. Where I live, it seems like all dive sites are 60, 80 or 100 feet. Those depths are outside of my comfort zone since I've not gone that deep. Is there much difference in 35 and 80 feet? A little bit. It's the main things that you notice is that more things are blue. The reds are going to start to disappear. Your air is going to run out a little bit faster because you've got that greater pressure. So each lungful of air is going to take more gas from your cylinder to actually fill your lungs. So your breathing rate is going to increase, and it gets a little bit colder because the warmth from the sun doesn't penetrate quite as deep. And you'll probably find it depends on the areas. In a lot of cases, there's some fewer fish. A lot of the smaller, brightly coloured things, they like to sit up sort of in that sun zone where they get plenty of sunlight and nutrients, because that's where a lot of the plant life is as well. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with going down that deep, but there's also nothing wrong with diving nice and shallow. It's yeah, it's warmer, it's brighter, it's usually more colourful. You tend to see a lot of little things as well. So that's the main thing. But if there is something interesting like a shipwreck or a certain coral formation down at that depth, then yeah, I'm perfectly happy going down there. It's just you have to sort of consider your decompression, because you're going to be on-gassing a little bit faster, so you might have to do more substantial stops coming back up, and yeah, your gas consumption rate is going to increase, so the dives tend to be a little bit shorter. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with where you are at 35 feet, and if you don't want to go down deeper, there's no real need to, unless there is something specifically to go down and see. And finally, Chris asks, how did you too dive in marine conservation so early on in your career? I want to do this. Luck and volunteering, basically. So after I left university, I was looking for work in all sorts of different areas, and nothing was really coming back, which a lot of people nowadays are having those kind of similar struggles. And I was lucky enough in that my parents could support me for a certain amount of time, and they could support me in spending some time volunteering abroad. So that was it. So I approached an NGO who were doing marine conservation work in Madagascar and a few other different countries as well. And yeah, I just signed up for one of their, I can't think what you call it, marine conservation project things out there, and yeah, I helped out with that, but it was sort of volunteer basis, and I think I actually had to sort of pay for certain things as well. But that's what sort of kick-started me. You have to be willing to sort of volunteer to get into that position, and then to continue it, or to sort of get in at a high level, because I was just a research assistant. I was basically just sort of dog's body collecting data and whatnot. If you want to go in and sort of spend a bit more time, I think it's more like university, where you're sort of specialising and doing these, running these studies and whatnot. So yeah, it really is just having a look around for marine conservation work if they need any research assistance or something, just general dog's body to do stuff, and that just kind of gets you in the door. And then if you want to take it further. But after that, I mean, I came back home and then I basically got a job at my local dive centre, just helping out, and then climbed up the ladder through the qualifications until I became an instructor, and that was sort of how I became a professional diver as such. But for marine conservation, yeah, to start off with at the beginning, it's very much volunteer work. And that's it for another week. Wonderful questions again, as always, everybody. But yeah, if you have any questions, comments, queries, or corrections about anything that you've heard, by all means, let us know down in the comments below. And if you use the hashtag AskMark, I'll talk about it in next week's show. Remember to head over to simplyscuba.com because we do sell all sorts of very interesting and shiny new scuba diving equipment all over the globe now, really. We've got our new warehouse in Venlo in the EU. So yeah, very exciting times for us. But yeah, visit the website, head over to our Instagram page because that's where we announce all of the latest stuff to hit our shelves. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.